Now, Eskom's failure to consistently generate power across the country has been frustrating for businesses. Most businesses that require electricity to operate stand to lose if the load shedding situation stays the same. There are calls for Eskom CEO André to be suspended amid racism allegations. Ruyter and his team of course, they're battling to keep Eskom power generation stable. And joining us now is Andile Nomlala from the Black Management Forum. Andile, it's always good to have you in studio. Let's just first talk about this particular process and your calls for, André to be suspended. Are you concerned that he might interfere with the investigation process?
Thanks, Bongiwe. Thanks for having the BMF in your studios.
Thank you.
Look, Bongiwe, we've had the message that comes from the board of Eskom saying that the allegations were not raised internally. And I don't understand what do they mean by allegations not raised internally when Soli is an employee of Eskom who had gone all out after being frustrated attended to by the board, the minister. He had gone as far as going to parliament. But the issue we're calling for, as a matter of principle, Bongiwe, is that if, for instance, let's say André was accused, even outside on the streets out there, of sexual harassment, corruption, or any of the other instances, I think everybody would have expected him, if the board deemed fit and necessary that he must be investigated, we would have expected him to at least be outside of Eskom so that the investigation and the process cannot just be fair, but it must also be seen to be fair. Mm-hmm. But now you can't have a situation where the board says, no, we'll investigate you. And racism to the BMF and the rest of South Africans is quite a serious allegation. And no one should take it lightly. How do you investigate? How do you expect that people would come forward and start spewing out the incidences and occurrences of racism when the very same person that is a CEO, we're not talking about a junior employee, is around the offices, and the people that would investigate must be appointed by him, he must sign off the invoices and all of those things. I mean, it's ridiculous. If you want to have a proper, decent probe, you must then suspend André and then institute the probe. It must be independent of any interference from anyone.
And I see in your statement you say that you've also, as an organization, received numerous complaints from employees and suppliers of Eskom and, about the prevailing white supremacy culture that is inculcated by new leadership led by the group CEO. This is what you're saying as the BMF. Have you handed over some of these complaints to the board?
Bongiwe, let me tell you this. We cautioned against appointing André at the beginning of his appointment to an extent that the President of the Republic called black business into a meeting in union buildings, and he begged us in that meeting to accept the gentleman as the leader. And that's what the BMF did subsequent to that. We had numerous discussions with him. But since he took over office, Eskom has a very organized groupings of black professionals. There's junior management, there's middle management, and all of them have been reaching out to us, complaining about numerous incidences. So what we are doing now is that we have compiled that information. We will submit it in the Scopa probe. We will request that BMF must be heard there, and also will alert the board. But we don't, let me just be very precise and clear, we don't have the confidence in the board of Eskom, particularly if they would take decisions as seriously as of racism and say, no, we will investigate the person and he must stay. So our issue with André is that if you look back from where he comes from, it's at Nampak, this is what we've raised. There, he was with a plethora of white males in his executive. So his track record has an inclination of being a racist, to be quite honest, because he presided over a Nampak that had black executives before. When he arrived, he decided to make white male executives. Now, if that behavior, taking that track record and you put it to what we have had at Eskom, from people that have come to complain to us, and you then think that we must then sit aside and allow such a situation to happen. So the issue of racism is a very serious issue to us. But secondly, Bongiwe, is the issue of his competency. Let's talk about that. We are coming out of a COVID inclined economy that is compromised by the lockdown, and we have no electricity to resuscitate that economy. During lockdown, there was no much demand for electricity. Now it's clear to us and for any other person in South Africa to see that there's no capacity at Eskom, particularly at the executive level, and by the way, from the board. You can't say that you are having Eskom as a critical state institution that is as complex and technical with quite a myriad debt problem, but you have such caliber of board members and André Ruyter himself to solve that problem. Now we're dealing with issues of racism. Those are not important in the economic sense of things. They are important from a racial point of view. André, we don't believe, that's why we're calling for him to be probed from his expertise point of view, from the year that he had given us 800 hours of load shedding during lockdown when there was far less demand for electricity.
Let's talk about, before we move on, I'd like to take you a step back. The President calls you for a meeting, part of Black Business. Please accept, Mr. de Ruyter as the CEO of Eskom. And as you say, as BMF, you were expressing reservations with that. Do you regret agreeing to go with what the President was begging you to do?
Look, as the BMF, we would support the President of the Republic. And sometimes, even though we would take some of his advice with a pinch of salt, but we are committed to seeing a prosperous South Africa, and we believe that the President of the Republic is the right person to take us there. But the reality of the matter is that we're not going to be blindsided or even blackmailed, by the way, as it is a prevailing phenomenon now, that people, whenever we're questioning issues of transformation, people say that we are joining the fight back group of state capturers. We are not in support of any corrupt people. We are not in support of anything that is not a panacea to South Africa's progress. Now, we don't regret supporting the President's call, but it doesn't mean that we would still stay beholden to that call, even when there are glaring instances and evidence of suppliers of Eskom who comes to the BMF office complaining about this and that. And any person that is doing any wrongdoing in South Africa must be held accountable. You can't just say to people that they are corrupt, they are this and that, and you don't bring evidence to the fore and subject them to the judicial process that attends to corrupt people or what black people are. That's the issue here. We don't mind people cleaning up, but they must not clean up in the air. They must bring evidence, and criminals must be charged, and they must be prosecuted. Now, we're not going to allow a mischief of people who say they are cleaning up whilst they are excluding black people. That one, we rather not clean up if it means that our economy must not be in our hands. Mm-hmm. The priority here, Bongiwe, is the advancement of black people. And people must not think that we're anti-white. We don't really care about whites. BMF stands for the advancement of black people, economically, socially, and otherwise. So our agenda to advance black people must not be seen as an anti-other people. We don't have to spend time and energy. We are not suffering from a prevailing mental oppression mind that has existed under apartheid. We are liberated people by Mandela, and we will stand firm and steadfast in fighting for advancement of black people. And that doesn't mean that a black person that is corrupt must then be defended by us. We're not going to defend corrupt black people, but you cannot go around castigating, excluding black people using an excuse that you are cleaning up. Then it means that every other black person that you find is corrupt.
Let's talk then about load shedding. Some of business owners that we've spoken to today are saying that it's been a battle to make ends meet. Some of them who are running restaurants, food is going off. They now have to spend money to buy generators. It's really been, harsh for them. It's been hard. What are some of your members telling you on the ground as some of the challenges they're facing due to load shedding?
Look, I like that you are bringing that discussion, Bongo. Look, there's a calamity of an economic crisis that came from the COVID. our business members, SMMEs and others, are crying, and they are in crisis. They don't have resources to get generators, converters, and all of those things that supply extra electricity. And the issue here, South Africans need to have this debate, is that Eskom, we know, is in a standing problem. But Eskom must get to a stage where they are able to tell South Africans that we will provide X amount of electricity 365 days a year consistently. And this idea of thinking that you're going to use renewable energy is not sustainable. You don't get electricity when there's rain from solar. You don't get electricity from the wind panels when there is no wind. So we need to get to a stage where we can talk to the private sector, give a turnkey solution to the private sector to build 1 or 2 other coal power stations. We cannot prioritize the issues of climate change at the expense of the viability of South Africa's economy. And if you do a turnkey solution with the private sector, Bongi, when we speak with the private sector, we speak with the capital markets, I can tell you for sure there's not a single one of them, both domestic and international, that would put money at Eskom as things stand with the type of leadership that is there. Now we need them to build and on a turnkey procurement transaction to build and have us sustainable electricity from coal, and then we can do the wind energy and other energy sources.
Unfortunately, sorry, Mr. Nomlala, I'm out of time, but I'm going to ask you one question, and I need you to reply with a yes or no. Is Eskom at a state of emergency level?
Yes, most definitely.
Thank you so much for your time today. That's Andile Nomlala, who is the president of the Black Management Forum.